Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three martinis coming up.
We made it to Friday again. We'll take that as a good martini. We're glad you're with us for the Three Martini Lunch as we head into the weekend here. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for you. And Jim, let's start with the good. The details are still a little bit unclear, but the big headline here, of course, is that Israel has struck back at Iran. Last weekend, of course, we saw the hundreds of missiles and drones. We chronicled that on Monday that Iran sent to attack Israel. Thankfully, Israel's own missile defense system, which we certainly generously helped to provide, as well as our coordinated efforts with them, with the British, with the Jordanians and so forth, very successful in knocking down the vast majority of those weapons. Damage very, very minimal. And it looks like fairly minimal damage in Iran as well. We don't know for sure because the Iranians will tell you that Israel didn't accomplish much regardless of what Israel actually accomplished. It looks like there was a strike near Isfahan and some other locations. And so what we are pretty sure of is that there were not nearly as many projectiles flying east as there were flying west. So whether this was a message attack, as some are saying, or too weak, as one report of someone in the Israeli war cabinet is suggesting, I don't know. Free Beacon is reporting that Iran has concluded, at least officially, that this is such a weak response that they don't need to respond to this. So what do you make of this based on what we know so far?
Yeah, look, as listeners probably remember, Biden began the week by telling Bibi Netanyahu, take the win. That apparently the successful performance of the Israeli air defenses, the Iron Dome, contributions from the U.S., the U.K., and the Jordanians, that because that had gone so well, that Israel should just declare victory and declare the conflict over. Now, that was never a likely message to resonate with Bibi Netanyahu and many of the Israelis. And I think most people looked at it and said, well, wait a second. If you launch 300 projectiles, drones and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles at Israel, and nothing gets fired back, then the message the Iranians are likely to take from this is, well, we can do this, and there will not be a significant retaliation. So I think Israel had to do something. And what we saw last night or in the early morning hours was something. And I have a feeling, considering the technological advantages that Israel had, if they wanted to hit with more missiles, they could have hit with more missiles. The IAEA said that they had seen no indication of any damage at any nuclear reactors or any of the Iranian nuclear program. Sadly, I think the message that the Israelis were saying is like, look, we didn't decide to take out your nuclear program today. But we can when we want to. And remember that. Do not fool yourself. And the idea that, you sent 300 stuff at us and almost nothing came through. You injured one little girl and you did some damage to a military base. We fired a lot less at you and our stuff got through, although for what it's worth, the Iranians said they shot down some drones. And I did find it interesting that the Iranians were not saying, how dare the Zionist entity attack us, blah, blah, blah. They said, we don't know who did this. This may have been an internal attack, and we don't see any reason to retaliate because we haven't determined it came from a foreign. Now, Israel's saying, we did this. And the Iranians say, hey, it could have been anybody. That, to me, indicates the Iranians do not want to continue this fight any further, or at least for now. Which I think, the Israelis and its fans and supporters and friends would say, okay, that's something of a win. But you do wonder, Biden saying that the U.S. would not assist in any Israeli retaliation for the previous air attack from Iran. Did that limit the options of Israel? They're currently fighting Hamas. They're currently fighting Hezbollah to the north. Did they have limited resources? Was this what they could do? Was this what they felt confident they could get through the Iranian air defenses? So the Israelis seem satisfied, maybe not everybody in the cabinet of Netanyahu, but I think they feel like they sent the signal they wanted to send. And maybe things will calm down from here on out, although it's the Middle East, so we shouldn't count on it calming down for a particularly long time.
No, well said. And one other nugget that I would love to learn more about, I heard that at least some of the Israeli drones took off from inside Iran, which is a very good indication that, hey, we're already here and we can attack you from within. That's got to unnerve the mullahs a little bit, too.
Greg, what's the meme? I'm in your base attacking your dudes or something like that from some poorly translated video game years and years ago. But, yeah, we're not sending them from air bases in our country. We're sending attacks from air bases in your country. Good luck finding them.
Surprise! We're already here. All right, let's talk about Fast Growing Trees. More great news. Did you know that Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and more than 2 million happy customers? They've got everything you could possibly want. Fruit trees, palm trees, evergreens, houseplants, and so much more.
Whatever you're interested in, they have it for you. And you can find the perfect fit for your climate and space. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants will be shipped directly to your door in just 1 or 2 days. And along with their 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, they offer free plant consultation forever.
They're super easy to work with. The website is great. The plants arrive right away, and they're in great shape. And if not, they will make it right very, very quickly. We love everything we've received from Fast Growing Trees. This spring, Fast Growing Trees has the best deals online, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to the 3 Martini Lunch get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code Martini at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code Martini at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code Martini. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini, and it is a very bad martini. Whenever you hear the words Volt Typhoon, it's probably a good idea to pay attention here. That's the name given to a Chinese-based hacking group by Microsoft last year when Microsoft found some malware discovered in telecom systems on the island of Guam, which, by the way, still has not tipped over. But nonetheless, Microsoft says this was part of a state-sponsored Chinese effort aimed at not only critical infrastructure, such as communications, electric and gas utilities, but also maritime operations and transportation. That report from Hot Air last year. Now, FBI Director Christopher Wray is speaking out on this again. Of all the criticism we have of the FBI, they've been pretty open about the threat posed by the Chinese, and we've certainly chronicled it here. But here's what Christopher Wray had to say yesterday about Chinese intentions towards our domestic critical infrastructure.
To the average person, critical infrastructure is largely invisible. These are sectors whose existence we don't often think about or appreciate as long as they're working right. But these vital sectors, we're talking about everything from water treatment facilities and energy grids to transportation and information technology, form the backbone of our society. And what a lot of Americans may not be tracking closely is that China is positioning its enormous hacking enterprise, remember, 50 to 1, for more than just the outrageous theft campaign I described a few minutes ago. It's using that mass, those numbers, to give itself the ability to physically wreak havoc on our critical infrastructure at a time of its choosing. The PRC has made it clear that it considers every sector that makes our society run fair game in its bid to dominate on the world stage, and that its plan is to land low blows against civilian infrastructure to try to induce panic and break America's will to resist.
50 to 1 in terms of the Chinese hacking disparity in their favor, unfortunately. Jim, we're also seeing reports at the border of a huge influx in Chinese illegal immigration. Whether this is tied in, I don't know. But given what Christopher Wray said, this seems to be a pretty coordinated effort. So, you know, we get focused on a lot of different issues, but the Chinese threat is a huge one, and it's not just their intentions towards Taiwan.
Yeah, look, if listeners to this podcast have developed probably a very well-founded skepticism of the FBI, I cannot begrudge them that. Lord knows we've had plenty of examples, whether you're frustrated by Jim Comey becoming part of the resistance, Peter Strzok, the Lovebirds, Agent Johnson. You know, there are lots of reasons we don't look at the FBI with the same trust and respect we used to. But I don't think there's any reason to doubt what Christopher Wray is saying here. And I was just thinking about how tough the job of FBI director must be. Because your job is to focus on all kinds of threats, foreign and domestic. So that means crazy white nationalists. That means militias. That also means the Chinese. It also means the Russians. It also means Islamist extremist groups of every stripe. You know, if it's a threat to America, it ends up on your desk at some day. And you're constantly telling the public and lawmakers, hey, we're at risk. We're doing the very best that we can. This threat is out there. We do not have perfect capabilities. And these groups really are out to harm Americans, and whether they're attacking now or whether they are kind of putting pieces in place for an attack down the road, like that's the sort of stuff that should keep us up at night. And by comparison, you have President Biden going around saying, well, we're going to see a thaw very shortly between U.S.-Chinese relations. No, we're not. They're still the same hostile guys they always were. They're just being more polite to you at the summit. That's the the thaw in the relations. They've agreed to start taking your phone calls again. That's how things have thawed and improved in that. For obvious reasons, no incumbent administration ever likes hearing that, hey, there's this giant, long simmering threats on the horizon that we've got a handle on as far as we can tell, but we also thought we were doing a good job on September 10th. Israel thought it was very secure on October 6th. Like, you just never know what's going to come out the next time. And the idea of this much malware, the idea of hacking, this idea of getting into critical systems, China apparently thinks either it has the ability or it's putting the pieces in place to have the ability to turn out the lights in portions of America when they want to. Or let's shut down the water and sewer treatment plants. Or let's shut down air traffic control. You can just imagine the kind of chaos. This is the kind of stuff we used to watch on 24 all the time, right? The idea of and the other thing is that if one country, I remember going to this really fascinating conference. This is decades ago, but China fires a missile at us. Okay, we know it came from China. When there's a hack, we may have suspicions it's from China. We may not have smoking gun evidence. And they may say, oh, it wasn't us. It was those independent hackers that have nothing to do with it. Russia does this sort of thing all the time. You notice the Russia hackers never attack Russia, right? You notice the Chinese hackers never attack China. It's all, since when do the Russians and Chinese have a hard time arresting people? Come on, they'll arrest people. That guy sneezed when Putin was talking. We're putting him in Siberia for the next 40 years. Wray is always the bearer of bad news. Wray is always the one who has to say, no, things are not great. Things are not fine. We're safe for now, but this threat is out there. And it's just never something the administration wants, particularly where you're an incumbent president running for re-election and things are going great, America. You've never had it so good. The economy's thriving. Don't worry about the border. Don't worry, we're safe. Don't worry about wars going all around the world. I'm not surprised that Wray does not. It just sometimes feels like Wray is living in a very different world than the typical lawmaker up on Capitol Hill. And that he's got to deal with, he can't spin. If bad stuff happens on his watch, the buck stops with him. And there's no way to say, well, it was that other FBI director whose fault it was, not mine. And so it's just kind of this frustrating sense of things that if you listen to the administration officials, relationship with China is great, and you never had. And then Wray comes along and says, no, they're totally planning on hacking. They want to at least have the ability to shut down all of our systems with the press of a button, and that should keep us awake at night. But my suspicion is that this president probably sleeps very soundly, starting at 7:30 in the evening.
You beat me to the joke. But yeah, I mean, your point is exactly right. China doesn't want a thaw. They want to be the dominant player. They may act like they want a thaw until they get you in the position nice and tight where they can stick the blade into your gut and twist the knife when they want to. But their intentions are not exactly secret here. They're trying to become the dominant superpower. And of all the areas where Republicans and Democrats are, butting heads on Capitol Hill and, they're very different positions on issues, making sure that our critical infrastructure is modern, updated, as hack-proof as possible. I mean, it's never impenetrable, and you got to keep working on that stuff. But we know it's outdated. We know there's issues. We had blackouts around 2003 that hit the East Coast, and we got to modernize it. No, we didn't really modernize it. We keep talking about it, but it doesn't actually happen. So I don't hear a lot of people talking about it unless there happens to be an issue like 20 years ago or like what happened in Texas a couple winters ago.
By the time people start talking about it, it's probably too late.
No, that's exactly right. Maybe China's just going to wait till Biden, reworks the grid so it's all running off renewable and wind and solar, and by then it won't do any good anyway.
The brilliant musical satirist Remy, who makes videos for Reason magazine, did a very funny one around the time of the Chinese spy balloon. And they showed, this sequence of antics on Capitol Hill, and they had the two spy guys kind of looking and say, maybe we just sit back and wait. We don't really need to. These guys are their own worst enemies. We should just stay out of their way. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're not. I'm sure they're not impressed with our deterrence right now. But good for Chris Wray for highlighting that for sure. All right, 4 Patriots. Look, if your grid does go down, that's where 4 Patriots could come in very, very handy. 4patriots.com/martini. The deluxe 3-month survival food kits are back in stock. They're very easy to make. You just need to Boil water, stir in the kits, and simmer and serve. These kits, again, 3 months, 688 total servings, are about a little under 8 per day, 1,500 calories per day. And now with improved recipes like pancakes, mac and cheese, chili, potato soup, spaghetti, and lasagna. Disaster-resistant packaging designed to last 25 years, 100% satisfaction guaranteed, and free shipping to the lower 48 states. You can stash food away and be confident that when a disaster strikes, you and your family will be ready. Go to 4patriots.com/martini to get the deluxe 3-month survival food kit and the peace of mind you deserve. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. That's the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. We know the 2024 presidential race is largely coming down to Trump versus Biden again, but one different player this year is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., depending on the poll. Sometimes he's in double digits, other times he's in high single digits. And when he does come up in political discussions like ours, sometimes the question is, which candidate does he actually harm most? You've written about this pretty recently in The Corner, and the conventional wisdom that he actually hurts Trump more doesn't seem to be borne out by how the two campaigns are reacting to it. Case in point, yesterday, Biden in Pennsylvania, which was a whole trip in and of itself over the past couple of days, endorsed by a bunch of the original RFK's children. Kerry Kennedy speaking for the family and making it clear that Joe Biden is the choice of the Kennedy family.
President Biden has been a champion for all the rights and freedoms that my father and uncles stood for. That's why nearly every single grandchild of Joe and Rose Kennedy supports Joe Biden. That's right. That's right. The Kennedy family endorses Joe Biden for president.
Well, there's one Joe and Rose Kennedy grandchild that does not endorse Joe Biden because he's running for president. Jim, the Kennedy family can say whatever they want. I'm not sure I trust the judgment of a woman who agreed to marry Andrew Cuomo. Nonetheless, seems almost desperate on the part of the Biden administration to have them stand together. I'm not sure anybody outside of the Kennedy family really cares, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, look, Biden at least is leading amongst the Kennedy family. Not uniformly, but yeah, it's a little closer than expected. So again, I keep running into left of center commentators who are like, no, RFK Jr. is going to hurt Trump more. And I understand that gut reaction. It splits the anti-incumbent vote. You could say that by being so anti-establishment, the Venn diagram of the Trump attitude and the Venn diagram of the RFK Jr. attitude overlaps some. Like, I get that, but none of the evidence is looking that way. Most notably, look at the polling. I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics polling right now. Now, I realize we elect presidents through an electoral college. We don't have a national popular vote. But general election, Trump versus Biden. Trump is currently ahead in the Real Clear Politics by 0.4 of a percentage point. Close, but, Trump is up by a tiny bit. When you throw in Kennedy, and also we should point out like Cornell West and Stein, and maybe it's West and Stein that are pulling away more Biden votes, but Trump is ahead by 1.7 percentage points in the Real Clear Politics average. And you look at the swing states, almost all the swing states, it's the same way. Michigan is an exception. I don't understand why. Maybe these are just quirks. And again, we're talking about like, usually the difference is like a percentage point, usually less than 2. So we're not saying it's a huge difference, but it does seem like when you throw Kennedy and these other options in there, Trump does a little bit better head to head against Biden. But also I would just say, like, look at, how everybody's reacting. And I think the entire Kennedy family coming out and emphasizing that they endorse Biden is another sign that Democrats are acting like it's a major problem. There's a reason that the guys at the Lincoln Project, in addition to that they felt this enormous need to make a giant fundraising campaign to fight against no labels. One is that they really needed a new vacation home. And this was, like the old one, it just wasn't up to snuff. They wanted to do some remodeling and, But like the Democrats are acting like third party and independent candidates are a risk to them. And based on the results in 2016 and the results in 2020, Ralph Nader and Jill Stein, that's a reasonable assumption on their part. And like I said, it seems to be borne out by this. And you notice it sounds like the Trump campaign wants to emphasize Kennedy, particularly in states like Michigan, particularly in places where there are, frustrated Democrats. It's something interesting. They said that most Americans don't know that actually our oil and gas production is the highest it's ever been under this current president, Joe Biden. I know it seems counterintuitive. I know it seems like he's, but you know whose people do know that? Jill Stein voters. In other words, the one demographic that Joe Biden would like these folks to forget about and not be aware of it, they're the ones who are paying attention to it. So Donald Trump and his supporters trying to, drum up support for Cornel West, Jill Stein, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is no worse than Democrats trying to help out the most MAGA-esque candidate in a Republican primary. Welcome to politics. Life is tough. Wear a cup. That's just the way these things, work. And I would not surprise me that I'm not sure what Robert F. Kennedy's final numbers are going to be. He used to be around the 15%, and now he's kind of in that high single-digit, low double-digit thing. It wouldn't shock me if he's more Perot 96 than Perot 92 when all is said and done. I think there are a bunch of frustrated Democrats who don't like the idea of voting for Joe Biden. He's 81 years old. He'll turn 82 right after the election. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to vote for this guy. But I think most of those folks will come home. Not all, but a chunk of them will. So we'll see how it shakes out. But certainly the Biden campaign is acting like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a serious threat to them and holding an event to say, hey, we still have most of the Kennedy family vote is another sign of things are not going great for them at this, early stage in the general election campaign.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I just wonder how much cachet, just even the Kennedy name, forget this particular spat within the family. It's been over 60 years since JFK was assassinated. It'll be soon 56 since RFK was assassinated, except for the third of Americans who think RFK Jr. is RFK.
I'm glad you brought that up because if you believe that this is Robert F. Kennedy and not Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you shouldn't vote. You crack a book, please, because it's not like RFK's assassination was they didn't get covered. It's not like this was ignored. And so, do you think he got better? Do you? Wow, I remember seeing the footage of the assassination. I remember seeing the footage of the funeral, but I must have done one of those Aaron Rodgers, medical routines. And he got better fast. It was even better than Rodgers' recovery from the Achilles tendon. That's yeah. No, it's his son. I think is our sense of how much the past is like? Are we still in baby boomer time? Like the baby boomers are around. They were young, so anyway.
I know you're relieved that Aaron Rodgers is not the running mate for RFK Jr., but, if he does find a way to win, I'm sure he's got a spot for him somewhere in that administration.
So he's now touting the whole thing about the CIA, brought crack cocaine to inner cities and he's all kinds of crazy conspiracies. And Greg, it is going to hurt me so much to endorse all of those conspiracy theories if he gets the Jets a Super Bowl win. At that point, I will have no choice but to sign on to every one of those crazy conspiracy theories because I'll be just that happy that the Jets have won a Super Bowl. I'm not sweating it. I'm not worried about it too much, but we'll see how it turns out.
If that happens, you'll know exactly how I felt in the second Bulls three-peat, having hated Dennis Rodman with a passion when he was on the Pistons, and then coming in, the crazy hair, going to wrestling events in the middle of the NBA Finals.
Kicking the cameraman in the crotch. Yeah.
Kicking the cameraman in the crotch, but then getting 22 rebounds and driving Karl Malone nuts in the finals, and you're like, okay.
It's a variation of that meme from The Onion. Tragedy, the worst person you know just made a terrific point. The worst player you know just gave a phenomenal performance to help your team to the championship. You know what, Greg, I wouldn't mind having that problem.
That's why I like the first three-peat better. There's some moral conflict in the second three-peat, but still fun to watch. Jim, have a good weekend. You're actually going to be away for the first 2 or 3 days. I think 3 days next week. So safe travels to you, and we'll see you back on Thursday.
Yes, a couple of speaking gigs in Kansas City. If you're going to be out there, great. Apparently, I'm meeting some professor who's a huge fan of the Three Martini Lunch while I'm out there. So
excellent.
We have listeners out there. So I also intend to consume my entire body weight in barbecue. And I don't know if, Greg, I don't know if you heard this. Taylor Swift has an album coming out. And there's apparently a song that's dedicated to Travis Kelce. So I'm effectively going to the center of the entire universe next week. There's nothing bigger or more important in the world than the latest in Travis and Taylor.
Wow. Super Bowl champs, great barbecue, Taylor Swift and Jim Garrity. Kansas City, can you handle it all at once?
This is the greatest week in Kansas City history. Yes.
It really is. Been there once. Really great people. Kind of a small town feel in a big city. I think you're going to love it. So safe travels, and we'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great weekend and join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.